On the way here, I was thinking about how in the course of a lifetime, there are certain moments. And as you live the life, those moments become really the essence of who you are. I remember, for example, my first real kiss. Alice Rubio, 8th grade. She was the coolest girl in school, and I was a nerd, and I had no idea why she would be kissing me. Right? I remember the birth of my daughter, Vanessa, who's now a chiropractor. She and Jason, phenomenal chiropractors in Colorado Springs. And I remember when she came down through the birth canal, and it was at a time when you couldn't have kids in hospitals and have any guarantee they weren't going to be damaged. So we did it at home, right? We did it at home. And I remember catching Vanessa, and at that moment it felt like the universe stuck a fist right through my chest and into my heart and grabbed my heart and started shaking crust off of my heart. And I learned what it meant to be a wet person versus a dry person at that moment in life. I remember the moment that I thought I made love to my wife at the time for an hour and 10 minutes, and then later realized they just switched to daylight savings time. That was a moment, right? We're going to go fast. You're going to have to keep up with this if you didn't get it, right? I recall the day sitting in a hospital in Colorado Springs when 2 MDs screwed up and took my 20-year-old daughter's life. And I remember a year and a half ago, sitting in a private audience, one-on-one in a room with the Dalai Lama. A private audience, of course, when he's here, he's a head of state. So there's 10 CIA guys in black suits talking in their wrists in this little room. He's also considered a terrorist, remarkably, in certain parts of the world. So they provide him 10 military people in fatigues with automatic weapons and hand grenades and knives strapped all over their body. And then there's the monks, and then there's the press that follows them everywhere. In a little room that was about 15 by 20, that's a private audience with the Dalai Lama. And he's quite a jokester. He and I talked for about 15, 20 minutes about chiropractic and principles and vitalism and lasting purpose to give, serve, love, and do out of abundance. And when I left the room after almost 20 years, able to forgive those 2 MDs. Moments, right? Moments in time. But they all have to be strung together with something, right? They all have to be put into some kind of context. And for me, that happens to be chiropractic, and what I want to talk about really quickly for the next few moments, right? This idea that we are in fact vitalistic visionaries who are relentlessly committed to creating disruptive social innovation. And I hope when we get done in the next 45 minutes or so, that has some real meaning to you. This is my calling card. This is what I live by. And it's about having impact in the world. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the idea of innovation, prosperity, and social change. How do we put innovation, prosperity, and social change together in a way that creates impact in a life that transforms other people's lives? One of the most telling moments I had, probably 2-3 years ago, was when Sidney Crosby wound up after ending his career as the youngest MVP in the National Hockey League, the poster child for the NHL. 2 massive concussions in Tampa, Florida on consecutive nights caused his career to end prematurely. And the MDs did what they do. They sat him in a dark room for 9 months, hoping that his vestibular brain would somehow reprogram, and it didn't. And he's still having massive migraine headaches, throwing up every day. They would float a puck by him slowly. He wouldn't even realize the puck was in his environment till it was passed. And quietly, without us even knowing it, the NHL flew him and various hockey players into Atlanta, Georgia, to get under care. And 1 week later, not months later, not a year later, not 9 months later in a dark room, 1 week later with chiropractic care and some work with some equipment called the gyrostem, he was on ESPN announcing his comeback to the NHL, and what a comeback it was. And Sports Illustrated picked it up and did a cover story and a bunch of stuff on the inside of it. And for 3 days, our phones shut down at Life University of people all over the world that had no hope, seeing this story, thinking there might be some hope for them. which may be the greatest thing that we offer patients, chiropractic patients. And I remember sitting in a restaurant in Colorado Springs with the inventor of the gyrostem, an engineer by the name of Kevin Mayer, and we're having dinner and we're reading the stacks of emails of people writing in, and I'll never forget this one, ever. 15-year-old girl in Canada who said, and this is quote, she said, I'm an extreme sport athlete, I mountain bike, I board, I rock climb. She goes, and a year ago, I fell off my bike in a race, damaged my head. They say I'll never be able to do any of those sports, not only competitively, probably never even get on a bike ever again in my lifetime. She said, I actually thought about committing suicide. I couldn't imagine a life without those things. And then the final line said this, can you give me my life back? Can you give me my life back? So to that, I want to talk about you and I, because we are vitalistic visionaries, relentlessly committed to creating disruptive social innovation. And without it, and with it, we're able to give 15-year-old kids their lives back. So let's talk about it. What do we mean by innovation of ideas? Here's an example.
Solar freaking roadways.
What are they?
They're solar freaking roadways.
What do they want from me?
Well, they're solar freaking roadways. Okay, so actually this time, what is it? It's technology that replaces all roadways, parking lots, sidewalks, driveways, tarmacs, bike paths, and outdoor recreation surfaces with solar panels. And not just lifeless, boring solar panels, smart, microprocessing, interlocking, hexagonal solar units. No more useless asphalt and concrete just sitting there baking in the sun, needing to be repaved and filling with potholes that ruin your axle alignment on your sweet ride, bro. These are intelligent solar panels. Replaced a panel at a time if damaged or malfunctioning. They're covered with a new tempered glass material that has been designed and tested to meet all impact, load, and traction requirements. Oh, and did I mention that they're also solar panels? They generate electricity, they generate capital, they pay for themselves, and they keep paying more because we're not gonna run out of sun for like 15 billion years. That lowers the cost of energy, unlike those bills in the mail that keep going up. And it's clean energy. Everyone can theoretically drive an electric car with no pollution and a minimal carbon footprint. Can you imagine how good our cities would smell? How much healthier we'd all be?
Excuse me, young man, am I being led to believe that this thing is some sort of thing?
Yes, it's a thing, a real thing. And clean energy is only its primary function. Grab a notepad, because this is where it gets interesting. For those in the north, the panels use energy they collect to power elements to keep the surface temperature a few degrees above freezing. They're heated. No more ice and snow on roads causing traffic delays, accidents, and injury. No more shoveling your driveway and sidewalk. No salt corroding your car or wasting tax money on snow removal. And you can ride your bike or drive your motorcycle all year round. Whoa! Every panel has a series of LED lights on the circuit board that can be programmed to make lanescape designs, warning signs, parking lot configurations, whatever. These roads never have to have lanes repainted, just reprogrammed to whatever we choose or whatever works best. Imagine a highway road lighting up ahead of you. How much safer it would be to drive at night. There'd be improved visibility for pilots landing on solar landing strips. Imagine walking onto a solar recreation court and choosing a sports configuration. Want to play basketball? Cool. Kids want to play hopscotch and Foursquare? Awesome. Ball hockey? Done. And with LED lights under your feet, it's gonna look like freaking Tron out there. But real, because this is the real world. Whoa. But these panels are also pressure sensitive, so they can detect when large debris like branches or boulders have fallen onto the road, or if an animal is crossing. They can warn drivers with LED text to slow down for an obstruction. I'm very, environmentally conscious. Good, because solar roadways use as much recycled material in their production as possible. Plus, the roadways have two channels that form what's called a cable corridor that runs concurrently with the roadways themselves. One part houses electrical cables, meaning power lines, data lines, fiber optics, and high-speed internet, which replaces the need for telephone poles and hanging wires that can be damaged during storms, causing power outages, or become extremely dangerous if severed either as fallen live wires or buried cables. The other channel captures and filters storm water and melted snow, moving them either to a treatment facility or treating them on-site, greatly decreasing the amount of pollution that enters our soil, lakes, rivers, and oceans. I'm kinda broke, bruh. Yeah, no kidding. The economy is in the toilet. Do you realize how many thousands of jobs this could create and sustain? Talk about a hypodermic adrenaline shot to the heart of the manufacturing and infrastructure sector. And it pays for itself. They're solar freaking roadways. I have concerns about the future. Is this thing even possible? I told you, yes. Solar roadway technology was invented by engineering couple Julie and Scott Broussard in 2006. Two of the sweetest people in the world who met when they were 3 and 4 years old. Listen to these two.
Hi, we're Scott and Julie Broussard, inventors of solar roadways.
We met in the 1960s when we were 3 and 4 years old.
These wonderful, intelligent intelligent people want to begin manufacturing a technology that can power the future of the whole freaking planet. They were awarded a contract from the Federal Highway Administration to build 2 prototypes, which are now complete. They're too humble and wonderful to yell at you over the internet, so I'm gonna do it. You need to know about this technology. You need to get behind it. You need to share it with everyone you know, because this is actually happening. Whoa! For the first time in human history, we have the technology to do what nature has done since the beginning of life on this planet. Harness the power of the sun to fuel our pursuits. And this isn't about filling a field with solar panels wasting land. Our roads and parking lots are just sitting there, reflecting sunlight and absorbing heat, not doing nothing for nobody. Which I guess means it's doing something for somebody, but not very much. It's time for an upgrade. We have to make the changes we want to see in the world. The FHWA has provided the startup funds to create the prototypes, but now a grassroots effort of concerned and inspired people can push this project into independent production. If we vote with our money for projects we believe in, we can create a future where our society is driven by new ideas. It need only begin with private driveways and parking lots. Once the ball gets rolling, it'll create a momentum all of its own. Let's put our roads to work. Not to mention, it's finally gonna look like the freaking future out there! City streets, driveways, sidewalks, and schoolyards glowing with LED panels? Are you kidding? Imagine street festivals, imagine Mardi Gras, imagine the Movement Electronic Music Festival in downtown Detroit, but all the concrete and hard plaza has been replaced with pressure-sensitive panels with multicolored lights in them. I would lose my mind. And not to mention, they're freaking solar panels! It has been estimated that if all the roads in America were converted to solar roadways, the country would generate 3 times as much energy as it currently uses. Think about that. An abundance of clean energy. So quickly, in review, love biking? Solar roadways. Hate high energy bills? Solar roadways. Love the movie Tron? Solar roadways. Worried about the economy? Solar roadways. Love sports? Solar roadways. Scared of hitting moose? Solar roadways. Hate gasoline prices? Solar roadways. Love helping developing countries? Solar roadways. Hate tar fumes? Solar roadways. Love recycling? Solar roadways. Hate winter driving? Solar roadways. Hate shoveling snow? Solar roadways. Love clean air? Solar roadways. Need a job? Solar roadways. Want to save this planet and make it sustainable for your kids and all future generations of life who can look back and say, hey, at least they invented solar freaking roadways? Please follow the link to Indiegogo.com. Meet Scott and Julie Broussard, check out their work, and get informed. This isn't just donating, it's an investment in a real future. Let's do this, because finally, it's possible.
Okay, cool, yes? Would you call that innovation? Innovation, right? Innovation. Watch, how about innovation for what we do in chiropractic? Right, give me the slides, thanks. Ian Coulter said there are 5 conversations going on in healthcare today. Here they are: vitalism versus mechanism. Are we as human beings just machines made up of physics and chemistry? Are we vital, whole, conscious, self-developing, self-healing, self-maintaining mechanisms? Depending on which one you choose, everything changes. Holism versus reductionism. Can we understand human health and existence by reducing it down to an eye, ear, nose, or throat? Or do we have to look at the organism as a whole, including how it functions in the environment, in relationships, for example? We know that people that are in healthy relationships have a higher quality of life and live longer than people that aren't in healthy relationships, even if the relationship is with a pet. Naturalism versus artificialism. What's the best way to deliver a child, surgically or through natural means? What's the best way to gain immunity, through artificial vaccination or natural exposure and building of the immune system? Humanism versus authoritarianism. What rights do patients have in the doctor-patient relationship? Does the doctor have the right to determine what treatments they're going to offer to you, or do they have the responsibility of showing you all the options, even if they don't provide those options? What are the rights of a patient in the doctor-patient relationship? And the last one, conservatism versus high-risk interventions. Is the best way to approach health through the idea, through the concept of extensive, dangerous, high-risk interventions like drugs and surgery, which is now the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States, behind cancer and cardiovascular disease? Or is the best way to have regular, ongoing, cost-effective, lifetime, conservative care, exercise, nutrition, right? Chiropractic care, stress reduction, cleaning up the environment? What's the best way to approach health? Conservative therapeutics versus high-risk interventions. Here's where we've been for 300 years, according to Coulter, and I agree. If you went down the list, and I said for 300 years to the healthcare community, where do we fall on this list? The answers would be mechanism, reductionism, technology, artificialism, authoritarianism, and high-risk interventions as technologies for health. Watch, Brian said that we all have something in common as chiropractors, even though we may have a broad range of philosophical perspectives. So you give me the feedback from a chiropractic standpoint. Vitalism or mechanism? Holism, reductionism? Naturalism or artificialism? Humanism or authoritarianism? Conservative therapeutics or high-risk interventions? I call that an innovative idea, wouldn't you? That could change the world as easily and maybe even more dramatically than solar frickin' roadways. And here's the next one. Not only do we have to have innovation, we have to have prosperity of the human spirit. In the 1930s, a young girl, 8 years old, was having difficulty in school. Her mother took her to see a psychologist, a therapist at the time, and a great therapist from the story as I understand it. The therapist interviewed her and mom for a while and then told the young girl, Jillian Lynn, that she should just wait in the room, that he wanted to talk to her mother in the next room. When they left the room, he turned on the radio so that music was playing. And when they got to the next room, they looked through a window and he said, watch, I want you to see what your daughter does. And her daughter got up and started to dance to the music. She just couldn't stand to sit in the chair. And the therapist said to Jillian Lynn's mother, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's just a dancer. Enroll her in a dance class. Here's Jillian Lynn
Something about
today.
a cast that comes from different countries and different shows and is sort of thrown together in a hurry. You're either going to have terrible ructions or it's all going to go very well indeed.
Exciting. It's good to see so many faces up there as well. I always wanted the ball to kind of be like a kind of nice slaughter on 10th Avenue, but we've never ever had the resources to do it, of course, you see.
Anybody know who the guy in the plaid shirt was? Who? Andrew Lloyd Webber, who created such plays as Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables, and Jillian Lynn went on as this young girl to have a great career in the ballet, the London Ballet, met up with Andrew Lloyd Webber and choreographed all of his shows, including Cats, which you saw some of the work in. Today, we would have stuck her on a drug, called her hyperactive, given her a diagnosis, and I doubt this would have happened. Wouldn't you agree? Watch, we have an innovative idea and a way of increasing the prosperity of the human spirit, not suppressing it. And then the last thing, how do we create social change?
The world needs you to stop being boring. Yeah, you. Boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but you're gooder than that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. Well, it is a cereal. And if life is a game, aren't we all on the same team? I mean, really, right? I'm on your team, be on my team. This is life, people. You got air coming through your nose. You got heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Really bad. Rocks, thorns, and glass. My parts broke. Wah! Not cool, Robert Frost. But what if there really were two paths? I want to be in the one that leads to awesome. It's like that dude Journey said, don't stop believing. Unless you dream stupid. Then you should get a better dream. I think that's how it goes. Get a better dream and keep going. Keep going, keep going, and keep going.
Watch. Yeah, I know. If we're going to be on a road in life, how many of you would like to be on the road to awesome? Right? So guess what? There's a field now called positive business. And what it recognizes is throughout our history, we've always had two parts of the equation: an innovative idea that you can sell, and the business, the prosperity, the skill to sell that and make a living at it. What they're now adding in this field of positive business is not just innovation and prosperity, but how do we do something that improves people's lives? How do we create social change? Like people like this, right? The movie Selma, if you haven't seen it, go see it. If you lived through it, while it's not the greatest movie ever, you'll remember the moments. It seems that every social movement at some point or another, whether it's Gandhi in India, whether it's the civil rights movement in Selma walking across that bridge, that we stay pretty disconnected from it until all of a sudden something breaks and we see the worst of human behavior being reflected on people that can't defend themselves. And in those moments, we have to make decisions about who we support and what we're going to do. People like this, Nelson Mandela, right? I got my daughters up. They were so young, I doubt they even remember it, the day he was being let out of prison, 28 years on Robbins Island. And I remember as he was walking out of this safe house that they had put him in for the last few months for negotiation, with the press waiting for him to exit prison. As he walked down, it took the longest time forever for him to walk down this corridor, this driveway, and out into freedom. Because he stopped along the way and shook hands with all the prisoners and the guards who had been protecting, holding him for all of those years. We found out later that Mandela had memorized the names of every one of the guards in the prison, and on the few days that he got to make phone calls, he used it to call, which he had also memorized, the children of these prisoners, or of these guards on their birthdays, wishing them happy birthday. And he got to the edge of the prison, and he had one step left to go to be out of this prison. And he stopped there for the longest time, and Bill Clinton asked him later, what were you thinking about when you stood there in that last moment? Was it a dramatic pause? Was it for the press? Was it for some reflection? Mandela said, no, I had none of that planned. He said, I got to the edge of that prison, and just before I stepped out, all the anger that I had inside of me that I thought I'd somehow dealt with during that time came up and just started flowing out. He said, I knew that if I stepped out of prison with all that anger in my heart, that they would still own me. He said, so I stood there until I got all that anger under control and out of my heart, and then I stepped out of prison a free man. Watch, who are we when we show up in life? Who are we? And this woman, I loved her. I got to introduce her twice in my life, Maya Angelou. Just passed away last year, right? Amazing woman who had a life that came through poverty, came through discrimination. She became an artist, spent a lot of her life, she had to, in Europe, came back, and at the end of her life, the United Nations had her write a poem for the world. And one of her poems is called When We Come to It. And in that poem, she exhorts us to realize that we are the change that's necessary in the world. And when are we finally going to come to it? I just met an individual recently. The Dalai Lama calls him his hero. His name is Richard Moore. Came to speak at Life in our positive psychology area. Richard Moore, at the age of 11, having grown up in Northern Ireland, in that place where there's generation after generation of hate and distrust and anger, was shot at the age of 11 by a British soldier and blinded for life. 33 years later, because his family was smart enough to raise him in an environment of reconciliation and forgiveness and compassion, he met the British soldier, forgave him publicly, and together they set up an organization called Children Caught in the Crossfire, where they go into these war-torn areas and teach families how to live with compassion and forgiveness to begin to end these cycles of hate that have gone on our planet that so impede us from coming, as Maya Angelou said, to realize that we are it, that this is that moment in time. Watch, it's not only about a great idea and prosperity, it's about taking the risk and going out and making social change in the world, to do what's necessary to change people's lives. I was in Asheville, North Carolina, at the Governor's Inn, a massive old hotel in Asheville, and I was walking through the lobby. This is the places where kings and queens and people have come, and there's pictures of all these people. When I walked in, they had a lot of Roy Crofter furniture, and the only other place I know where Roy Crofter furniture exists is at Palmer College in Davenport. Then those of you who went to school there remember the old wooden chairs with the leather seats that were in the clinic, and the Roy Crofter clock, of which I know there are only 2 in the world, and one is in Davenport, and it was the other one I found sitting in the lobby of this hotel. And I was walking down the hallway, I saw the pictures of Will Rogers, a young picture of Eleanor Roosevelt, and then B.J. Palmer, underneath which the picture read, "The father of chiropractic." Watch, innovative ideas. And then I had to take this picture. This is the lobby of the Governor's Inn. Huge, huge place with big fireplaces on each end that you can walk into. And right where I'm standing, right where those rocker chairs are, is where B.J. Palmer wrote "The Bigness of the Fellow Within." I have to tell you, moments in time, yes, that seem somewhat irrelevant perhaps to the people around us, but not irrelevant at all. And then Brian did a great job of talking about how chiropractic is advancing today. I recently went to the retirement, was invited to speak at the retirement party of Senator Tom Harkin, who's here on the right. You know, we owe a lot to Senator Tom Harkin in our profession. Do you know that we were always held accountable for not having research in healthcare? Well, guess what? The first dollars for chiropractic research didn't flow into our profession until 1995. 1995 was the first federal dollar that showed up for chiropractic, and it was because of Senator Harkin. A lot of us know him as this really liberal senator from Iowa that created the American Disabilities Act. The reason why there's a ramp for Brian to get up and down on stage is because of Senator Tom Harkin. But the real character, one of them, right in the middle of Senator Harkin and myself, is Senator Harkin's lifetime friend, Mike Crawford. Mike Crawford was for 12 years the chancellor at Palmer College. That's where I met him. And one day, Mike Crawford, long before we saw any dollars for chiropractic research, was in Washington, D.C. visiting his friend, Senator Harkin, and said, "You know what? There is no money for chiropractic research. We need some money." And Harkin said, "You know what? You're right. Let's go down the hallway and pull Ted Kennedy out of an appropriations meeting," which they did. Ted Kennedy's chief of staff at the time was an MD, just so you know. They pulled Kennedy out of the appropriations committee. Harkin said to Kennedy, "You know what? We need to put a few $1,000,000 in the pot for chiropractic research." Kennedy said, "I think you're right," went back in, stuck $5 million in a pork bill that was going through. You know, we don't have many of those anymore. But pork caused chiropractic to get its first dollars, thanks to Mike Crawford and his friend, Senator Harkin, who later set up the Center for Alternative Medicine, which is now NCAM, which provides tens of millions of dollars for alternative healthcare research. And they were honoring Senator Harkin and had the opportunity to be one of 6 people to speak at his retirement party. There I met this guy. I've talked about this guy for 25 years. Right? Anybody know who it is? Eisenberg out of Harvard. You know that famous study in 1989 when they found that there were 37 million more visits to alternative healthcare practitioners than all the mainstream medical doctors and medical specialists combined? That was Eisenberg. He was then asked to do the study every year at Harvard for the next 10 years. The last year they found that there were 250 million more visits to alternative healthcare practitioners than all the mainstream medical doctors and medical specialists. During those 10 years, a lot of stuff came down on our profession. One of the things that was being thrown at us is that we were uneducated quacks, misleading uneducated people, ripping them off and endangering their health by delaying appropriate medical care. Yet all the research that was done over the next 10 years found that to be, in fact, just the opposite. Sean Austin at Stanford University found out, for example, that the educational levels of people who visit chiropractors, 50% of them have a college degree or higher, while those that stay in traditional medicine, 50% have a high school education or less. They found, for example, that people were not rejecting medicine, but were demanding at the Office of Alternative Futures, demanding a healthcare system that reflected their social values of exercise, nutrition, healthy birthing habits, etc. And they didn't want medicine to go away. They just didn't want it to be the only approach or the first approach. All of that because of these people like Eisenberg. So at Life University, we have a think tank called the OCTAGON. We've been doing 5 years, we had done 5 years of conferences on non-medical healthcare policy in the United States. And in the process met this guy who 20 years ago was hired by the profession to do a study of where chiropractic was going to go in the next decade. 10 years later, they asked him to redo the study. It just came out last year. Clem Bezold said we have 4 options in chiropractic today. He had 3 until attending one of these conferences. Here they were. Number 1, we can remain a marginalized profession. 2, we can have all-out civil war in our profession. As some are pushing so hard, we could also become the back doctors. $90 billion a year out there. We just need to cash in and take a piece of that. Give up some of our big dreams in chiropractic about a different healthcare system and become the back doctors. Or Bezold's final option is that we could accept a vitalistic philosophy and take that vitalistic philosophy and build a profession that is a disruptive innovation in the world today. There was a conference, the ACC RAC conference, and a straw vote was taken of the participants there, asking them which one of these they would suggest we do. Without question, number 4 became the direction that the profession felt that it needed to go in. You can pick up these reports and read them. So what will the office of the future look like, right? 1, I believe that our profession is going to have to be neurologically based. Look, if tomorrow there was no listing in the old yellow pages for chiropractic, we either had to go in as neurologist or orthopedist, which one would we have to go under? Neurologist. And yet most of what we put out to the public is all about bones, isn't it? One is we need a reevaluation of our branding as a profession. I believe we're going to have to be neurologically based. We're going to have to be engaged with a lot of other professions that function on a unique set of principles and practices, but we need to find a way of supporting chiropractors to practice chiropractic and not have to practice minimal pieces of other professions for patients. We're going to have to find out how to provide improved quality care. We're going to have to acknowledge that lifestyle practitioners like birthing people, et cetera, and licensed healthcare practitioners are going to have to be part of our team if we're going to be in this. And by the way, with those contracts with lifestyle practitioners and other licensed healthcare providers, chiropractic does have an opportunity within the Affordable Care Act of actually being a designated health home. They like to call it a sickness or a disease home, but a health home for chiropractic, and we're working on that. And then we have to recognize that people out there are already building their own healthcare teams. They just need leadership. We had an architect when I was at Palmer some years ago who was doing some work for the college. His wife came up with a very serious health issue, and she decided not to go the medical route. She went to see a naturopath who did what they do. She took some blood, recommended some dietary changes, dealt with some other issues. Along the way, the naturopath said, you know what, you ought to see a chiropractor as part of this approach. Wound up going to the chiropractor, you know the routine, frequent visits, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, progressive exams, all of that kind of stuff. The chiropractor said, you know what, you ought to be getting some stress reduction. I'm going to refer you to a massage therapist. Eventually, over a 2-year period, she built the team that helped her deal with this problem. But get this now, she had to build it on her own. Medicine builds it for them, doesn't it? You walk in a hospital, whatever you need, they're going to move you around in that hospital to get what one practitioner thinks another practitioner might contribute. We've got to be ready to lead these teams because people are building their own teams, and we need to help and facilitate them building vitalistic teams versus medical teams, not only to get well, but to stay well during the course of their lifetime. Let's do this real quick. So here we go. The 3 things that damage the nerve system. Our first, physical traumas. Yes? Christopher Reeve falls off his horse, breaks his neck, damages his spinal cord. What does he have? Malfunction of his body, diseases and infirmities. He died of pneumonia, and a reduced quantity and quality of life. Physical traumas to the nerve system. Secondly, 50% of all kids playing high school football today have had 1 or more major concussions. Their brains have been rattled around inside their head. We think that once the symptoms go away, because this happened to my oldest grandson, who's the quarterback on the varsity team. Hit, knocked out on the field, walking around on his feet, but out. A few days of headaches, some lapses in memory, goes away, and then we think everything's okay. We know it's not. Anybody seen Muhammad Ali lately? It's not okay, and it needs to be dealt with. And then finally, spinal subluxation. All of these create physical traumas to the nerve system. Then the neuroenvironmental toxins that interfere with the nerve system. The stuff that just exists because of our culture, radiation in our environment, pollution that we breathe in. The things that we have control over in our personal lifestyle, cigarette smoke, vaccines, mercury in the fillings in our teeth. And then, of course, the corporate things that are thrust on us, GMOs, pesticides, nutrient-deficient foods. All of these neuroenvironmental toxins reduce the ability of the organism to be whole. Yes? And then finally, the neuro-emotional stresses, right? We know, for example, that the veterans coming home from the war have 22 more suicides per week than the whole rest of the general population. Now, either we select people that are prone for this to go off and fight in wars, or something traumatic happens to their nerve system while they're there. The pathologies that we see, that we diagnose. And then, of course, the cultural, personal issues that happen before the age of 7, and the traumas like children being abused sexually, etc. All of that locked in their nerve system, interfering with their body's ability to be successfully healthy. Here's the deal. We've got to figure out how to live a life and get our society to live a life where they're eliminating and preventing these kinds of toxins, physical, emotional, and environmental, and it's going to take a team of people to do that. Right? I believe it's going to look something like this. Right? We're going to see chiropractic leading these teams with our philosophy and understanding of the nerve system. That people like Sidney Crosby are going to be able to participate in things like functional neurology, vitalistic nutrition to clean up the pesticides and allow us to get whole foods, kinesiology, proper movement of the body, and then positive psychology. We already know, for example, that a brain working at positive versus neutral, negative, or stressed is more successful with dealing with the issues in its life and in the world. Doctors, for example, are 19% more accurate if their brain is working at positive versus neutral, negative, or stress. And I can keep going on with statistics on this. The bottom line is, how we see the world literally impacts how we function in the world. Imagine a healthcare team available to patients today that had these services available to them, and in addition to that, had the lifestyle practitioners, the birth people, et cetera, when necessary, and licensed medical professionals in other fields that would be sensitive enough to help us get people off of drugs, et cetera, as their body started to repair and heal itself. That, to me, is the office of the future. That is the office that we've got to build as a profession, and we're the people that can lead that profession. So here we go. Clayton Christensen in 1995 wrote an article called Disruptive Technologies. These are things, as he defines them, that are products or services that are so disruptive and designed for a new set of customers that in fact it causes a change that you can't perceive. For example, the internet was that, yes? Right? We're walking around with computers in our hands, right? A disruptive innovation. Do you realize the first text message was sent in 1996? 1996. My mother's still trying to get her hands around it. She's 90 years of age now. She still works in my sister's office, has been working in that same office because she worked for my dad when they graduated in 1947 and set up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she has worked there every single day since 1947. Now, don't give her any kudos. She hates it. She only goes there because since 1947, she has not been able to find one single person to run the front desk correctly. Just so you know. All of her grandkids and great-grandkids said, you know what? We are not sending you letters any longer. We're not going to take pictures, develop them down at Walgreens, put them in an envelope and mail them to you. You want to know what we're doing? Get on Facebook. My mother thinks that all of that technology is the devil's work, just so you know. But she had to. She had to if she's going to stay connected to the family. So I got her an iPad. It was an ordeal. It still is. I actually send her messages. I know she gets them because then she sits down at her IBM Selectric. I have no idea where she gets parts for this thing. And types the response to the email I send her, puts it in an envelope, puts a stamp on it, and mails it to me in Atlanta. That's my mom. Every now and then, She goes on, she calls it the Google. She gets on the Google, right? And tells me certain things that she finds on the Google. Guess what? It was a disruptive innovation, wouldn't you agree? The internet. So here are disruptive innovations. There are 4 levels of them. First, sustaining. This is an innovation that doesn't affect existing markets, right? Next one is called evolutionary. This is an innovation that improves a product in an existing market in ways that customers are expecting. You know, this isn't that someone invented the pencil. This means they put the eraser on the pencil. You follow me? It was just an evolutionary process that was pretty much predicted and expected. The next are revolutionary innovations. These are unexpected, but nevertheless, they do not affect existing markets. And you notice that they use the example here of the automobile, which you and I would probably think on the surface was a disruptive innovation. Don't you agree? You know what the problem was? The original automobiles were so expensive that only a few people could afford them. So they didn't change existing markets, you follow me? They were a novelty that a few rich people could participate in. And until Henry Ford invented the assembly line and allowed the automobile to be able to be purchased by almost everybody in America, only then was the automobile a disruptive innovation. And that's this last part. This is an innovation that creates a new market by applying a different set of values, in this case the assembly line, which ultimately and unexpectedly overtake an existing market. The lower price Model T Ford. So here's what some of them are. Communications, right? The disruptive innovation was email. What did it displace for the most part? Postal mail service, snail mail, yes? Music. Man, I got on an airplane. Garrett Gunderson and I wound up on the same flight last night. We plugged in our headphones, turned on our music. I've got 4,000 songs, and I don't even have a bit of information in my phone, even close to having that thing filled up. Remember when you used to have to go to a store to buy a record? Then you had to buy the whole album even though you wanted to hear one thing? I'm on this plane at 30,000 feet, hooked into Wi-Fi, downloading a specific song so that I can listen to it on the flight. Disruptive innovation. Right? Photography. So Mark Mandel and I are backstage doing selfies that are already posted on Facebook just before I walked out, right? In the old days, we'd had to take some film and the moment would have been lost. Watch, you get the idea. I'm not going to go through all of these, right? Disruptive innovations. Here's one that has the possibility. If chiropractic is a vitalistic health profession, as Beasold outlined it, with our notion of vitalism, holism, humanism, conservative therapeutics, were to become part of the everyday life of a human being on this planet, my guess would we would disrupt the medical community. Not because we set out to do it, but because the philosophy is so different and the approach to healthcare is so different. Yes? By the way, do know this. There is no room really for chiropractic inside of medicine. But there is ample room for medicine inside of chiropractic as a referral mechanism when patients need it after conservative care has not succeeded. Yes, we've always recognized that from the beginning of time as a profession. There's no room for vitalism inside a mechanistic view of the world and human beings. But there's ample room for the mechanistic field inside a broader picture of vitalism. So who would be better off at leading these healthcare revolutions than a profession that acknowledges the need for all of these things and has an appropriate way that they should be applied in people's lives? I think chiropractic has everything it takes to be a disruptive innovation if we can get there. But here's the deal, right? Famous saying, the law of diffusion of innovation says this: with any product or idea that comes along, there is a flow to that product, service, or idea's acceptance. The first stage, 2.5% of the population, are called the innovators. Now, we all fall at different places on this scale at different time with different products and services. Let's take cell telephones, though. When I was living in Los Angeles, I was one of that 2.5%. I was one of the very first people, handful of people, that had a telephone in my Jaguar, in my car. The piece of equipment necessary to run it took over the entire trunk. You had to have an antenna drilled through a hole in your window that went up above your car. And then you had a coiled line that went up to a hand phone, just like the old hand line or landlines at home. and you could pick up. The problem was you could only talk to other people that had the same thing in their car. There were like 10 of us in LA that could talk to each other. I never even met any of them. It cost me $1,700 to put that in my car. But get this, I was first. Innovators, they want to be first. It says something about who they are. The next stage are the early adopters. These are the people that spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out. These are the people that complained forever, thinking that someday they could stop the airlines from allowing smoking on the airplanes. Remember when there was smoking on airplanes? Joe Felicia, I'd get ready to go home at the end of a seminar. We'd be in first class, there'd be 2 rows. Row 1 would be no smoking, row 2 would be smoking. Everybody was smoking on those planes. When you hit this point, about 18% of the population, social research tells us that at 18%, can you put the slide up, please? At 18%, a tipping happens. And all of a sudden, the next 68% of the population accepts the idea without even knowing they're accepting it as if it's always been around. How many people in this room right now do not have a dentist that you see for regular dental care, cleaning, that kind of stuff? You do not have a dentist that you see. I see about 6 hands in the audience. If we would ask the same question 30 years ago, most people would have raised their hand. Because we use dentists what? If we needed a filling, we needed a root canal, we'd go in for short-term care. I bet in a room like this, not of chiropractors, but the general population, if I ask how many of you do not have a chiropractor that you see on a regular basis for appropriate neurological care, that most of the hands in the room would go up right now. We need to hit 18%, and when that happens, guess what? We'll eventually ask that question, and 6 hands will go up that don't have regular chiropractor that they see. Does that make sense? By the way, when we get there, we can forget having practice management and all that stuff that we spend time doing. We can forget trying to figure out how to get new patients. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do we hit this 18% tipping point? And then you've got the laggards, like my mom still sent, with her IBM Selectric typewriter, sending me letters. So here we go. We need to hit this 18%. If you don't pay attention to anything else, let's get this as far as what we're going to do when we walk out of here. Here's the problem. Well, let me show you what happened. This is Seth Godin, one of the most prevalent business management consultants today, social consultants. Says that if you want to get to 18%, the first thing you have to do is tell your story. You then have to connect people. Remember that. Connect people. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Then you have to make certain commitments. Then the world begins to change, and you keep the cycle going. Right? By the way, I think we have a pretty good story. I was in Roy Sweat's office, my chiropractor in Atlanta, AO, the little tap on the neck. I said, can I look at some of your x-rays? He said, sure. I pulled out 10 of them randomly, looked at the films, and they all look like this. You see, this is the first film, pre-film. This is after care. You know what the length of time was between the first and second x-ray? Couple hours. No, not 6 months, not a year, a couple hours. Pre, same day, post. Hey, we have a pretty good story, wouldn't you agree? Of giving 15-year-old girls their lives back.
My name is Ryan, and about 1.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with a glioblastoma stage 4 brain tumor. Very low survival rate. Went through the standard of care, chemotherapy, radiation. Wasn't seeing any reduction in size of the tumor. Was seeing pseudo growth every time. So I decided to get into chiropractic care. I started getting regular adjustments, removed all the toxins I could from my life, changed my nutrition, and 5 months later, that tumor was down to the size of a marble. So here I am 1.5 years later, with only scar tissue remaining from that brain tumor. Something that modern medicine didn't think was possible was made possible through a holistic chiropractic approach. And that has given me a future with my family, a future that otherwise I might not have had. My name is Ryan Pruitt, and this is my life.
We have a story, folks. We have a story. So here's what it looks like. Oh. You guys want to run that one for me? Thanks. Appreciate it. Good crew backstage. Here's our story in two, oops.
My name is Ryan.
No,
and
sorry. All right, so how many people know what this is? By the way, the two shoes on the right, the leopard skin one, the pink one, I bought for a little girl named Gia, who was the daughter of my former secretary. She's quite a diva. She's wearing these now around Phoenix, Arizona. Anybody know the shoes? Tom's, thank you. Anybody know what Tom's shoes is about, what their story is? Right, buy one, get one free. What Tom's Shoes says is, for every pair of shoes we sell, we'll give the identical pair of shoes to someone else on the planet who can't afford a pair of shoes. Guess what? Tom has me telling you his story now. It's such a great story, isn't it?
Right now, there are more people on Facebook than there were on the planet 200 years ago. Humanity's greatest desire is to belong and connect. And now we see each other. We hear each other.
Grandpa, I love you. I love you.
Well, I want to take a picture.
We share what we love, and it reminds us what we all have in common.
Dug out alive and well after 7.5 days.
If you believe in yourself, you will know how to ride a bike. Rock and roll!
So now technically your device is on. Can you tell?
Watch. For the first time in history, in our profession, we don't have to rely on a pharmaceutical industry that we have to get around to get our message out. Today, we have the ability to connect with people free all over the planet if we know how to do it. We not only have a great story, as Seth says, we have the ability to connect people, don't we? Watch this. These people, Jason Russell is a filmmaker that was in Africa. He met up with the boy on the right, Jacob. Jacob was a victim of the #1 war criminal in the world. His name is Joseph Kony, according to The Hague. This is a guy that has no political agenda, doesn't want to run a country. He simply maintains an army of people designed to preserve his lifestyle. What he does, he goes into villages, in African villages, in isolated areas where there's little military resistance. He takes children out of their home. He puts the girls in prostitution, takes the young boys like Jacob, gives them a weapon, makes them kill their parents, and then puts them in his army. He's taken 30,000 children that way. 30,000 children. And he survives because he lives in the shadows. Jason Russell met Jacob. Jacob had escaped from the army, had no hope for the future, no family, was going to commit suicide. Jason Russell said, "Don't do it, I'll do something about it." Came back to the United States, went to see his senator. You know what his senator told him? We can't provide any military support to run this guy down because we have no economic interest in that portion of the world. Shame on us. Shame on us as a country. So Jason did the one thing he could do. He connected people. He created a network of people. And in March of 2012, he produced an 18-minute film. And when it went public,
So the thing is, my son
108 million
Gavin
people
has
saw it.
I've never really explained to him what I do. He knows I work in Africa, but he doesn't know what the war's about or who Joseph Kony is. So I'm gonna explain it to him for the first time today. That's what we're doing. So Gav, are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you some questions,
Okay.
and you can just look at me and answer the questions to me.
I'm kind of nervous.
What do I do for a job?
You stop the bad guys from being mean.
Who are the bad guys? Do you know where
Star Wars people.
Star Wars people?
Yeah.
Those are the
Good
bad
response.
guys?
Yeah.
Can I tell you the bad guy's name?
Yeah.
This is the guy, Joseph Kony.
He's the bad guy?
Yeah. Who's this?
Jacob.
Joseph Kony, he has an army, okay? And what he does is he takes children from their parents and he gives them a gun to shoot, and he makes them shoot and kill other people.
But they're not going to do what he says because they're nice guys, right?
Yeah, they don't want to do what he says, but he forces them to do bad things. What do you think about that?
Sad.
So this film came out, and in 12 weeks, 105 million people in the United States had seen the film. Today, the government sent people, not today, but after this, sent people, military advisors, to help run the guy down. They believe he's been offed at this particular time. Here's the deal. I can make, with my background in film at UCLA, the 20-minute version of Kony 2012 about chiropractic. We'd put it out. A few people would like it in the profession. They'd send it to a few friends. We'd get a bunch of negative feedback that, from some people that didn't think it's what it should be, and it'd die, and next month we'd be looking for the next answer in chiropractic. So with my 2 minutes left, here's what I need you to do. We need to build the network. We know what the message is, yes? We know we can put the message out. We know Facebook will give us access to it. The question is, we've got to build the network so when it goes out, 105 million people see the story. Here's the math. 20,000 chiropractors who have 1,000 patients that have liked their office on Facebook. If you don't know what that is, your staff will tell you what it is and how to do it. You set a computer up at the front desk. When a patient leaves, you say, hey, like our office, they like your office, and then whenever you put something out, it goes out to those people automatically. Got it? You need 1,000 of those. You need them by the year. You need it, listen to this now, by September 18th, 2018, 3 years from now, just under. Reason? On September 18th, 2018, we're going to release the 20-minute version of Kony 2012. We need 20,000 chiropractors, 1,000 likes each in their office. That's easy, right? That's 20 million people. You and I both know at least 5 of those 1,000 people in your office will send it on to someone else. Way more than that, but at least 5. At 5 people, we're at 100 million people seeing our message in chiropractic. Fair game? The place to do it, it's free, is this site right here. It's called Amplified. It's not a life deal. It's not owned by anyone. Nobody makes any money off this. There's nothing to sell. It is the richest source of chiropractic information that you can. And every day you can go on. It's all free, and you can download it and send it out to your patients over the next 3 years while we're building this network. We already have 6,000 chiropractors signed up doing this on a daily basis. Fair game? It takes 4 minutes to sign up. Go here, sign up, get on that page. We need to build the network to get our story out. So let me wrap up. Here's some of the stuff that's on Amplified.
This says my body is 100.2. My mom says I'm sick, but I think I'm doing just fine. See, bacteria and viruses can only live at a certain temperature. Since your body is real smart, it can raise its own temperature. So as bacteria guys die. Bye-bye, bacteria guys. So why does my mom want to give me a pill to bring down my temperature? Let's see here. May cause drowsiness. May cause swelling on the face. May cause stomach ulcers. What's rectal bleeding? That's nasty. Maybe I should forget all this stuff and let my body do its own thing. My body's pretty smart. Now that's what I call over-the-counter drugs. This has been a public service announcement from Kid Natural.
There are already about 15 of these out. They come out, one new one comes out every 2 weeks until we hit 26 for an entire year. It's a sample of some of the stuff that's on Amplified. It's all free. Go get it. There's a lot of people contributing, from individual practitioners to life. So here's my closing comment, the time I have left. This is our new school in Rome we're getting ready to open up. Here's some of the crazies. Here's my dad, 1947. He and 4 other chiropractors fighting for rights in New Mexico had their offices firebombed, the windows blown right out of their offices, trying to make sure that chiropractors had a fair chance of getting through the basic science exams to practice chiropractic. And next to my sister, who's a chiropractor now in New Mexico, who's at the lead of fighting the drug issue in New Mexico to make sure our profession stays free of drugs and surgery. This is my sister, me. That's how I used to look, actually. My wife at the time, and my daughter Vanessa sitting on an airplane headed down to a chiropractic program. She's now a chiropractor. This is my daughter who passed away. The reason why I get up every single morning and go to work has nothing to do with money. It's not only about telling the story and connecting people on Amplified, it's about having a reason, a commitment for going to do it. I get up every day and go to work so that we have less of these kids, less of these things happening, and more children getting their lives back. Here's my closing comment.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Thanks for being a crazy. Thanks.
Close. Stay.
Okay.